And if this is your first time giving your mind a little love, I have a few goodies for you. First, don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And second, sign up for the Morning Mind Love. Think of it like a weekday oracle from your highest self to help you start each day with a positive focus. Plus, you'll get 2 gifts absolutely free: a 30-minute binaural meditation and 30 days of journaling prompts to help you remember who you truly are. So join over 9,000 people and go to mindlove.com to sign up. Welcome to Mind Love, episode 337. Today's episode is all about decoding the mind-food connection.
Where your mind left your body, what was the instant that it happened, right? We are deeply connected to all the parts of our life. And so it is like almost like a ribbon that has been weaved into our soul. And so here, it could have been your coworker who totally triggered you. But the reality is that came from your youth. And so it doesn't actually necessarily matter so much. It's just how you're going to respond. You're going to master this, right? You're going to say, I accept that this is how I feel. And I can't change anybody who made me feel this way, but I can now choose to respond in a way that is healthier for my body.
Turn up your frequency with Mind Love. Bite-sized brain hacks for seekers, dreamers, and doers. It's time to give your mind a little love with your host, Melissa Monti.
If this is your first time giving your mind a little love, don't forget to subscribe to the show. Mind love is a habit, and the more you give your mind that love and intention, the better you'll feel about yourself and your life. Plus, it's really a win-win because more subscribers means Mind Love attracts even more amazing guests to bring you their wisdom. So don't forget to subscribe. Have you ever felt trapped by your own thoughts about food and eating? Like you're stuck in a cycle and you can't get out? Just describing it this way sends me back. My struggle with bulimia was dark. It was one of the hardest periods of my life. Some days I wouldn't even leave my house because I was caught in this back-to-back cycle of binging and purging, ending with a swollen throat and a hoarse voice. Maybe your struggle isn't as extreme as mine, although maybe it is because it is more common than we'd like to believe. But I think a lot of us, especially women, can relate to this pattern. Eyeing food that we know we shouldn't, trying to resist, then obsessing over it until we cave. One turns to too many and suddenly the box is empty. Then the aftermath comes. Guilt, self-blame, or worse, reaching for more food because, well, we've done the damage, why not go all in? And the cycle continues. But it doesn't have to. My relationship with food has been a whole evolution. At one point, I remember thinking how liberating it would be to get to a place where food was just fuel, not pleasure. Well, now I've even moved past that. Food can definitely be pleasurable, but the real wholesome kind of pleasure, not that addictive pleasure. I used to dream of appreciating food the way what I thought a French woman does, rather than with that frantic energy like a party girl in the Hollywood Hills at 3 a.m. chasing the last line of Coke. Specific? Well, this topic in general is a little tricky for me because I have different views than a lot of the experts. So I'm going to be real about that right now. You'll hear me discuss this in the interview. And I'm diving into it because I value the shades of gray. I think different things work for different people. I'll lay out the range of thoughts here so you can find your own fit and decide what works for you. But the part I'm talking about is that there is a big push against labeling any food as bad. And I agree that no one should feel shame around what they eat. But for me, learning how my body reacts to certain foods was a game changer. Realizing that a lot of processed foods are engineered to be addictive shifted the blame away from my so-called lack of willpower to actually just understanding the science behind it. So understanding that certain foods are more filling while other foods made me feel like a bottomless pit helped me stop blaming myself and my own body. And so I guess I can get on board with the no food is bad outlook, but I actually don't classify all things as food at all. Some are lab creations to me, and some people feel like that is a form of shaming. I get that my approach might not jive with everyone's latest theories, but it's what worked for me personally and others that I know. So I want to emphasize that what works for me doesn't work for everyone. I'm not trying to shame anyone about their food. So if you're not on board the some foods aren't food train like I am, I'm also going to give space to someone else that has a different view of what has worked for the many, many people she's worked with, whereas I have worked with none around food. So it boils down to this, though. Always check in with yourself. There are countless perspectives out there. I have mentioned my Rolodex of mindsets before, but I'm actually going to change that metaphor because I just realized that no one under the age of like 38 knows what a Rolodex is. So from here on out, it's going to be my Tinder of mindsets because I am hip and cool. So swipe through, test how a mindset feels. If it fits, swipe right and keep it. If not, swipe left. The key is knowing yourself well enough to determine what resonates. Ask yourself if it's beneficial or if it drags you down, and shape your mindset in a way that's uniquely yours. So today we're changing our relationship with food in whatever way that works for us. Our guest is Kim Shapira. She's a celebrity dietitian, nutritional therapist, and author with a Bachelor of Science in Kinesiology from Tulane University and a master's degree in human metabolism and clinical nutrition from Boston University. She spent over 25 years helping people lose weight and keep it off, with a giant emphasis on keeping it off. So 3 key things we will learn are how to recognize and manage self-denial with food, how to decode your body's food language, and how to find serenity in indulgence. Can we talk about back to school chaos for a second? The kids are getting back into routines, everyone's schedules are crazy, and suddenly you're supposed to have dinner on the table every night like some kind of magician. But want to know what I figured out? Shopping, planning, and cooking food really can be simple and stress-free, which is why I love Hungry Root. Hungry Root takes the stress out of mealtime by filling your cart with personalized picks and planning your week of meals, getting smarter with every order. With over 15,000 recipes to choose from each week, many ready in just 15 minutes or less, it's a huge lifesaver on those busy weeknights. I personally love their Smart Cart technology. It learns what I actually like and then recommends groceries, recipes, and supplements tailored to my tastes and needs. Plus, I love the kids' snack section where I get these really easy snacks to just keep in the car or throw in our to-go bags or lunch boxes for those of you who need them. They screen out over 200 additives, including high fructose corn syrup and artificial sweeteners. They only source high-quality meat and seafood with no hormones or antibiotics, and they carry trusted brands like Oatly and Vital Farms. The time that I have gotten back has been incredible. Take advantage of this exclusive offer. For a limited time, get 40% off your first box, plus get a free item in every box for life. Go to hungryroot.com/mindlove and use code MINDLOVE. That's hungryroot.com/mindlove, code MINDLOVE to get 40% off your first box and a free item of your choice for life. hungryroot.com/mindlove, code MINDLOVE. I've hired a lot of people over the years, and I can tell you the biggest mistake that most business owners make. They think posting a job and waiting is a strategy, but it is not. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other job sites. Indeed, sponsored jobs helps you stand out and hire fast. With sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates so that you can reach the people you want faster. And it makes a huge difference. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. One of the things that I love about Indeed is that it makes hiring so fast because the best candidates are already there, actively looking. Plus, with Indeed sponsored jobs, there's no monthly subscriptions, no long-term contracts, and you only pay for results. How fast is Indeed? Well, in the minute I've been talking to you, 23 hires were made on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. There's no need to wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/mindlove. Just go to Indeed.com/mindlove right now and support the show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/mindlove. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need. This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. Can we talk about how overwhelming wellness advice has become? Cold plunges, gratitude journals, screen detoxes, morning routines. It just feels like there's advice for everything these days. But how do you know what actually works for you? I've been down that rabbit hole, trying every new trend, buying every new course, following every guru, and it is exhausting. And honestly, a lot of it just added more noise to my life. With all the information overload about mental health and wellness, it can be a real struggle to know what's true and what actions to take. That's where talking to actual professionals comes in. Therapy helps you cut through all that noise and figure out what you actually need, not what some influencer is selling, but what works for your specific situation. It can teach you how to set boundaries, trust your own judgment, and be the best version of yourself. BetterHelp is the world's largest online therapy platform with over 30,000 therapists. They have a rating of 4.9 from 1.7 million reviews, and you can join a session at the click of a button and switch therapists anytime if it's not the right fit. Instead of drowning in generic advice, you get personalized recommendations from someone who actually knows what they're talking about. As the largest online therapy provider in the world, BetterHelp can provide access to mental health professionals with a diverse variety of expertise. Talk it out with BetterHelp. Our listeners get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/mindlove. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/mindlove.
Shopify's point of sale system helps you sell at every stage of your business. Need a fast and secure way to take payments in person? We've got you covered. How about card readers you can rely on anywhere you sell?
Thanks. Have a good one.
Yep, that too. Want one place to manage all your online and in-person sales? That's kind of our thing. Wherever you sell, businesses that grow with Shopify. Sign up for your $1 a month trial at shopify.com/listen. Shopify.com/listen.
And now let's welcome Kim Shapira to the show.
I'm so happy to be here.
So what inspired you to focus on people's relationships with food?
It's a really good question. I don't think it's been asked like that before. As humans, we all develop emotional triggers that we work on mastering throughout our life. And mine was health. And when a mentor that I had in high school told me that food can make somebody sick or healthy, I jumped right in. I didn't have deep love for food or love to cook. I'm not like a foodie in the sense that I want to talk about food all day, but I want to talk about people's health all day. And initially when I started my practice, my first client, I helped her lose 30 pounds by putting her on a diet. And pretty much towards the end of that goal, she said, okay, now I'm going to gain the weight back. And I said, why would you do that? And of course, that's deeply triggering for me because of course we just fixed her cholesterol and blood pressure and triglycerides. And like, now you're on the journey, go have a good life. And she said, well, my husband wants to have sex with me all the time. And I was molested as a child. And I thought, okay, I actually don't know what I'm doing here. I can tell people what to eat and how to clean up their blood tests and change their life, but I can't help people change and have sustainable results. And so I did a deep dive in all the things that I was missing, neuroscience, spiritual psychology, quantum physics, and started recognizing that, oh my gosh, people eat the same way that I shop. And as I started healing myself, I started using those methods and helping people. And so that's what inspired me, is that I feel like I have the answers to help people have a sustainably healthy lifestyle.
I might need to talk to you about your plan for shopping after this, but I want to start with
the same plan. So there you go.
Okay, cool. Well, I want to start with the story that your client told you. I had a pretty severe eating disorder. I dealt with bulimia for about 10 years. And what I found later on when I was on my healing journey was how much our relationships with food are tied to, especially sexual assault, but it starts with other things too. How does our relationship with food begin? And what are the things that can derail it?
Yeah, so loaded, so loaded. Again, we're back to these little humans, that we started out being, and our influences are our parents, and their parents and their parents and the communities that we live in and the restaurants that are available, the foods and the types of food and the price of food. I mean, there's so many threads that I'm seeing in my mind as you're asking me that question. And then it comes down to where it lands exactly on you at the exact time. And so, for instance, I was a sick kid. Obviously, I have a health trigger. And I had just come out of the hospital. I was 12. It was 1986. And my mom's best friend saw me and she said, "Oh my gosh, you've gained weight." Now, I heard her say, "Kim, you look healthy." And depending on how it lands for somebody, that could have been a very pivotal moment to change anyone's course on their life. Right. And so it really is a deeply loaded question. And then again, like our parents had so many limitations. I'm 50. My mom didn't read Reader's Digest. I mean, my grandmother did, but we didn't talk about nutrient dense food, macronutrients, the vitamins that are in kale. We didn't talk about these things at all. So deeply loaded, and we're all a work in progress.
All of my 90s babies friends are like, wait, so Pop-Tarts aren't a fruit? Like, I feel like we had the worst health revolution, like this specific age group. It was all about processed foods. I had no idea what was healthy. What I thought was healthy were fat-free cookies. And I was like, oh,
Yeah.
perfect. This means I can eat 12 of them because there's no fat. I was only looking at
I love
fat.
those snack wells.
I know. They were soft on the top, crunchy on the bottom, a little bit of
Oh my
chemical
God.
aftertaste. It was so
That's when I was in grad school, and that's why I went to grad school. I mean, you talk about like people saying food is healthy or unhealthy, snack wells. I needed to know why people were afraid of fat.
It makes sense. When I look back at my just history with food, it was so tumultuous. Clearly, I had an eating disorder for a very long time. But in college, there would be days where there would be something fun happening and I would choose to stay home because I was in the middle of a binge purge cycle. That would be like all of the money I had in my bank account. I would be taking my roommate's food. I feel horrible about that now. I remember I worked at a tanning salon and people would come in. They had like Mystic Tan packages, unlimited, and somebody would come in and pay cash for a Mystic Tan, and I would take the cash and use it at the fast food restaurant across the street and just log it in under somebody else's account. And so it's funny when I really reflect back, this is like drug addictive behavior around food. And when I was in high school, I was sexually assaulted, and soon after that, I gained a lot of weight. And I thought that it was because I went and got the Depo shot and it messed with my hormones. But I also see clearly that's when my binge eating really took off. I remember specifically being at a sleepover and there was like a bowl of M&Ms and I was eating them and somebody said something like, "Oh, I've had too many." And I remember actually reflecting in my mind, like, what does that even mean? Since I'm already eating a lot, I might as well eat all of them. It was like I couldn't stop that. And I was like, I already feel too full. So might as well just have this feeling only tonight instead of now and then later when this settles.
Yeah.
And so reading about the connection between those things, I'd read stuff like, well, it's your way of almost gaining weight to create some sort of safeguard around your body or to like insulate your body, protect yourself. And when I was in it, that didn't make sense to me. When I got out of it, I started to really see clearly the patterns. And so I'm curious, when you've worked with people, how do you identify those things that have really affected people? And does knowing them help them to move through it? Or is it just something like, if you need to look, you can look, but you don't have to?
Yeah.
How do you identify those things that have really affected people? And does knowing them help them to move through it? Or is it just something like, if you need to look, you can look, but you don't have to?
Yeah, I'm really sorry for what you went through. And I do see your eating disorder as a superpower. And so I think because I see it as a defense mechanism, a coping mechanism, I start with that. And so I work a lot with helping people find their mind. And I talk about this a lot. So, like, do this with me now. We'll just do this practice. So if anyone's listening, they also have this practice. So repeat after me. Where is my body?
Where is my body?
It's right here.
It's right here.
Where is my mind?
Where is my mind?
Okay, so now you actually go find your mind. Where is yours?
That's a hard one.
Okay, so since you can't answer it, we're going to repeat it. Where is my body?
Where is my body?
It's right here.
It's right here.
Where is my mind?
Where is my mind?
Now go find yours.
It's right here.
Okay, so that only took you 2 times. Sometimes when people are anxious, it takes them 10, sometimes 3. Sometimes they have to do that 10 times a day. But we need to know where our mind is so we can move forward in anything. So how badly do you have to pee right now?
I went right before this, so I actually don't for the first time.
Yeah, and it took you less than a split second for you to scan your body and figure it out. And so hunger is like having to pee. We would all go to the doctor if we stopped having to pee. Hunger is a way that our body communicates that we need fuel. It's a good thing, right? It's not a scary thing. It's just a very normal thing that tells us our body is functioning. And we want to be hungry, just like we want to pee. Just if I pee right now, that's not it for the day. I'm going to do it a few more times. But interestingly enough, I'm not stressed about it. I'm not worried where the toilets are. I know that somehow I'll find a toilet. It could get uncomfortable, but I'll be okay. And with food, we have this just universal fear that it's the enemy or that there isn't enough. And so whenever our body detects stress, our mind goes somewhere else. And it's our job to practice bringing our mind back to this moment. And I do believe that mindfulness is knowing where your mind is, bringing it back without judgment. And so back to your question, we don't have to know why it jumped. We just know that it did. And so if you and I were having this conversation right now, and all of a sudden your alarm goes off in your house, you're probably going to say, you know what, Kim, I'm sorry. Hold on 1 second. I got to turn that panel off. And then before you come back, you're going to scan your house and make sure it's safe to continue our conversation. It's going to become a priority. So when we have thoughts about food, it's actually an alarm. And we need to turn the panel off and say, mind, we're safe, but only if we are, right? So we have to find our mind. Then we have to tell our mind we're safe. Our mind produces 60,000 thoughts a day in response to something you see, smell, feel, hear, or touch. That's not you producing those thoughts. You're taking credit for them. That's like saying, Melissa, how many times did you ask your heart to beat? What about your lungs to breathe? No, our body is self-regulating, self-healing. Its job is to help us survive in the most pleasurable way. So if we're having a thought about food, it's always an alarm. And it could mean that we're hungry. And it could mean that we're really stressed. It could mean that it's more fun than the way that my body feels right now. Either way, we have to bring our mind to this moment. And if it's anything other than hunger, we have to be able to scan our body and say, okay, my chest is tight. Okay, I feel uncomfortable in my skin. And then this is an opportunity for us to say, what would I tell my best friend to do? Eat? Would I tell my best friend to eat when they're stressed? That's what I do. Would I tell my best friend to eat because it's more fun than not? No, we would say the food is right there. You can have it when you're hungry. Look up from the food. Look around. See who's in the room with you. Call a friend, right? We need to properly cope with the moment we're in. We're not going to like all the moments, and we can't predict the stress, right? And so we just need to be more responsive to the stress. And then food becomes fuel. You should absolutely love the food you're eating. You should also keep in mind you eat 21 times a week. You're going to eat hundreds of meals a year. You can't remember any of them. And you need to be here in this moment. And you need to practice gratitude.
Because of the length of time that I had an eating disorder, and even before my eating disorder of bulimia officially started, I had disordered eating. I had started binge eating way before that. Bulimia was actually kind of my way of fitting into this box that I thought was appropriate while continuing being able to binge eat. But I remember it was 3 to 4 years after I had had my last binge. I was on this healing path. Well, I think I had one randomly in between that, but my life was wildly different. And I remember feeling so free. That's what kept me from doing that, is this feeling of freedom, because the amount of times I would find myself in this, I'd be in the middle of a binge purge and I'd be like, oh my gosh, I can't get out of this. And I could see my moments just cycling over and over again. And it felt like a mental disorder, because it was.
Yeah.
But I remember it was even 3 to 4 years afterwards, and I had this realization that I still didn't fully understand what hunger felt like what it really meant to be hungry. I was eating on this cadence that felt good to me, so I wouldn't binge and I wouldn't starve. And the only time I really felt hunger was when I was too hungry, because I would notice it. I would feel lightheaded and irritable, I was
because
hangry.
we're animalistic. We
Yeah.
have less control. Yes. Again,
And
not a Melissa thing. This is a human thing.
Yes. And so what is the process to even really knowing that we're hungry if we're still kind of in the midst of these negative patterns?
Yeah. So compassion is not an easy thing to come by, it turns out, right? To say we're sorry to ourselves for what we're experiencing and what we're going through, and being mindful again in this moment. I feel really bad about the way that I feel, and my body also needs food. We live inside of our bodies, right? We poured our souls into these bodies, and then we made an agreement that we would take care of it and it would take care of us. And we were going to live in this body. And it gives us messages all day long. And so really leaning into that relationship with, I love my body, not maybe the way that it looks, but I love that it can smell and think and function. And I can help it in so many ways, turning to that kind of relationship rather than resisting, restricting, hating. No one's going to love you more than you love yourself. There's 2 quotes that I often say. The first one is, perks of being a wallflower. We accept the love we think we deserve. And I'm not coming from a place where the rest of your relationships look like. I'm coming from a place of, how do I love myself? What does that look like? And the second quote is, I changed it a little bit because it has the word illness and I use the word disordered eating. If this disordered eating right now feels like a cage, please try to hear me. The door is unlocked and you are free to go. And the reason people stay in the cage is because it's comfortable. And we operate from a place of making decisions based on fear or trust. And so we don't trust what the outside of the cage looks like. We have to create and imagine. We have to dream and build. And that's going to require love.
Tell us about our rational versus irrational brains, because I feel like people don't always realize that you can switch from one side to the other, and then they're in their irrational brain and wondering why it's not thinking logically.
Yeah. Well, irrational brain is a temper tantrum, right? So we have them as kids, we have them as adults, and we probably don't even see it. But what it really looks like is, and the way that I would use it is with food, right? So I would say almost 100% of people, all right, maybe 98% of people wake up in the morning and think food is fuel. Food is fuel. They know it, they believe it, and then they become emotionally triggered in some way. Again, back to, we can't predict the storm, right? It could be a phone call. It could be you just got your report card. It could be a deadline. It could be you were up all night with a crying baby. It could be a sick baby. We can't predict the storm, right? And so anything could trigger us based on these first emotional triggers that we develop in the first 6 years of our life, plus anytime we go through something traumatic in our life. For me, 9/11, COVID, every single person alive is emotionally triggered by it. It could be they wanted to leave their house. They didn't want to leave their house. Everybody has a different story playing out. Anytime you go through something traumatizing, we develop new triggers and then we work to master them in our life. And so the triggers are the actual storm. And so what happens is we kind of flip our lid and our mind leaves our body and goes to that trauma bond that you have. And we have to practice bringing it back. So a rational mind knows that food is fuel. An irrational mind thinks food is the enemy, or food is fun, or food is comfort, or food is my friend. Again, anytime we think food is anything other than fuel, it means we are not okay. It means we need to bring our mind back to our body. And that's the work, right? So our job is to put space between the thought to eat and the action to eat. We want to work on that space. So we want to be able to go from irrational to rational. We want to find our mind. And a couple ways to do it are grounding things, right? Taking deep breaths, humming, meditating, smelling beautiful scents like aromatherapy. Lots of ways to ground ourselves so our mind can be in our body, so we can scan, because once we know what our body's feeling, then we can move forward. We have to accept the moment we're in before we can.
I see a trend online these days around giving people permission to eat what they want. And I'm going to clarify that because, of course, that sounds obvious. But you say that food is fuel.
Mm-hmm.
In the same way, the dessert you get at that nice dinner isn't necessarily fueling your body.
Yeah.
But it's not that we necessarily need to avoid it the whole time. Like there is that room for indulgence. So where is the room? How do you know?
Love it. Yeah. So the title of my book is called This Is What You're Really Hungry For. And I'm just curious what you think the answer is.
I have a wild relationship with food. I have gone through all sorts of
So you think it's food?
Trends. Well, did you ask what my relationship with where it comes from?
I said, what do you think the title, what do you think the answer is? This is what you're really hungry for.
Got you. Yes, I know that often we meet our emotional needs with shopping, food, all the things. So usually for me, it's an emotional thing.
Yeah. So I would say the answer, in my opinion, my professional opinion, is peace. Peace around wellness, peace around food. Just imagine if we didn't have to run to the doctors or be worried about things. Peace. We're looking for peace. And so if we're working on a sustainable long-term relationship with food, what we're actually looking for is normal. And so if the answer is normal, and we're using these 6 rules that I use to develop a value system around self-love and taking care of my body with food, then we're actually creating that peace. We don't want to work in a place where we're perfect. We want to be progressive always. I don't want to have to know, yesterday I might have had 5 cups of water. I know I need 8. And I want to be intentional about it. I know how much better I feel when I do 8. And so if I recognize that I did 5, I'm not beating myself up or persecuting. I'm not ashamed of this. I'm more intentional today to make sure, and here I am halfway through the first 4 today. I put it on my desk at 7:15. So I'm setting myself up for success. It's not the end of the world if it doesn't happen. So normal eating looks like birthday cake on Tuesday. It doesn't mean I need cake on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. It means I have a normal relationship with food. I eat primarily when I'm hungry. And the thing about our body is that it thrives in consistency. So if we have cake on Tuesday and we weren't hungry for it, and we go right back to listening to the needs of our body on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, it's like the cake never happened. The problem is when we have cake on Tuesday, and just like you said when you were a kid, I already did it, I might as well keep going. That's when we start seeing weight problems. So again, normal just means not using words like treats, indulgence, rewards, but seeing food as food. So the first rule is to eat when you're hungry. The second rule is to eat what you love, but there is a comma and it says, make sure the food loves you back. We are looking for sustainable health. If you're getting headaches, tearing eyes, diarrhea, bloating, nausea, gas, joint pain, guess what? That food doesn't love you back. Why are you eating it? So then we go back to this relationship. Do you stay in a relationship with someone who hurts you? Would you continually go to a restaurant that's poisoning you? What are you doing? Why are you doing it? Let's talk about the way you love yourself. We have choices when we're talking about ice cream. You don't have to have the one made from eggs and milk. Come on, right? We can love ourselves a little differently. What about if you try eating it when you're hungry? What if you have that as your breakfast, lunch, and dinner? Oh, you don't want it for breakfast, lunch, and dinner? That's interesting. I wonder if you're in a sugar spiral. I wonder if you're eating it because you're addicted or craving it and has nothing to do with hunger. Let's deal with that, right? There's always a place for it, but it's not an everyday thing, is it? Maybe. I don't know. We have to talk about it, right? So did that like clarify or make sense a little bit, or what are your thoughts?
Yeah, that makes 100% sense to me. I'm often fairly triggered by posts because people are like, no, it's fine to have the Pop-Tarts. And I'm like, why not just get a healthier version of that? Like you're craving the sweetness. It's, to me, there's this whole like trend on like, don't call any food unhealthy. And I'm like, I'm looking at the ingredients and I don't even see anything that look like food. I can't call it healthy. And so I'm always like kind of arguing
so
with these
I
like
don't
body
disagree
positivity.
with you, but it doesn't work. And so I agree with don't call anything unhealthy because blueberries give me diarrhea. And according to a lot of people's lists, they're healthy. And so when we use the word healthy, it's completely individualized and we have to be very careful. I mean, I eat Cheerios a lot. Oats do not bother me. I have lots of clients who can't eat oats, who are affected by the oats, right? I can't call something healthy, but I can call it food. And you need to know what your body is experiencing and how your body is feeling so you can then take better care of your own body. So I understand what you mean, how you're being triggered by that. And I can appreciate that. And I would probably unfollow them.
Yeah, I do. And also one of them's a close friend of mine. And so I'm just like, I can't unfollow you. Like, move on. But I guess for me, I totally understand because it's not like everything I eat is like just a fruit or just like organic meat, although most things are. Like I said, I am probably the most extreme of the people I know on how I've curated the food because I know what makes me feel good.
That's it.
And for me, the highly processed is where I'm like, even that we don't call unhealthy.
No, we don't. We don't call it unhealthy. And so you've had a long, journey where you've actually paid attention to your body and you've made adjustments so you can feel good. This is news to some people. They're so stuck in diet culture and threatened, like you're saying, by all of these different posts. I mean, people are having celery juice because their neighbor did, and they're not understanding why they're having diarrhea. So you have to start all by yourself, figuring out, what do I love? I mean, I have a client who has been restricted her whole life, and she's in her 60s. and she wanted to lose weight, and she yo-yo diets. So she started off eating pastries for 3 weeks in a row. That's how she started. It wasn't what I recommended. That's how she took my message, eat what you love, make sure the food loves you back. She lost 10 pounds in those 3 weeks, which is appropriate weight loss for somebody who is following all 6 of my rules. And then she decided she didn't want pastries anymore. That is growth. That's growth. If I said pastries are bad, pastries are unhealthy, she would be thinking about pastries for the rest of her life. But now she knows she can have them. We didn't talk about the fat content, the trans fat. We didn't talk about the starches. We didn't talk about these things. We talked about eating when you're hungry, cutting it in half, trusting you can have more, seeing how you feel. And she did. And that's what she ate. And now she doesn't. That's growth. That's what you want, right? That's what I want for people. I want somebody to find something that is sustainable. If we label food as good, bad, I should, I shouldn't, it's healthy, it's unhealthy, then we are staying in this futile cycle. To me, dessert is very interesting, like Thanksgiving, which is, people seem to eat like they've never eaten before, and then they go for pumpkin pie or whatever it is. What if they waited 2 hours, they went for a walk, they played some games, and, it would be so much better for their systems, right? That's an idea. But the reality is you just ate. How are you hungry for pumpkin pie? Where is that going in your physical body? Do you pay attention to what your body needs? If you have a gas tank, do you try and overfill it? Do you trust you can get more gas? Right? And so we have to change our mentality. I really like the pumpkin pie on Thanksgiving. I prefer that over the turkey. So guess what? I'm making that choice. It's a Thursday night. It's not what I'm going to do on Friday. It's not a big deal. This is what I'm going to do. Right? Maybe it's not. I don't really need to worry about it because I'm not in that moment. I also don't know how hungry I am, but I also know that I can have that same meal on Friday, on Saturday, in May, anytime I want. So I don't need to become bombarded with it. But what's interesting is because you change it from food and then you sensationalize this idea that it's dessert, it's taken on a life of its own. But if you call it food, I always like to think of everything as a banana. And like the first thing you do if someone hands you a banana is you think, am I hungry? If not, you just put the banana on hold, trusting it'll be there. If we start thinking of food as a banana, you're always going to ask yourself, am I hungry for the pumpkin pie? Am I hungry for this turkey?
Yeah, that's really helpful for me. And anything I share is not to argue, just to highlight ways of thinking, because I know that for me to have overcome my eating disorder, it was helpful for me to be dogmatic. Like I went through a vegan phase and then I realized that wasn't working for me, which was a very intense mindset shift. And now I kind of follow sort of pro-metabolic, but I don't like to be in the confines of anything.
Good, don't be.
And fine eating things that people would consider a dessert or whatever. Like I don't limit myself from those. For me, I source the quality of ingredients and I want to be able to have simple ingredients. And so that's very important to me and my family. And so I know a lot of people kind of live in those confines or the actual opposites. And so it's difficult for me. What was really helpful for me in actually overcoming my eating disorder is realizing which foods are meant to be addictive and which foods are not. And so it's difficult for me to sometimes understand when it's like nothing's unhealthy, nothing's off limits. So I'm like, but like if you were trying to stop doing crack, would you be like, well, I'm just going to have a little crack? So
I do agree with you 100%. And we do know that sugar is crack, but sugar is everywhere. And having a normal relationship is being able to have sugar. So when you think about the ingredients, like I want my clients to be able to eat in Los Angeles, in Italy, in North Carolina, and in Mexico, and not think this is going to screw up everything. We are normal eaters, which means you eat wherever you are, when you're hungry, and you do not worry about it. And you go right back to who you are when you're home, but it stays the same. This is normal eating, right? Definitely my clients who are eating sugar or eating after dinner, let's say, and they're needing something sweet, we talk about experimenting with completely cutting it out. Again, I use the word experimenting because it cannot be permanent. You cannot possibly tell me that if I went to New Orleans, I'm not having a beignet or I'm not going to try king cake during Mardi Gras. These are things that I'm interested in, right? If I'm going wherever, I might want the sorbet that they're known for. I don't know how I'm going to feel. So experimenting with taking it out only so you can feel what crack does to your body makes it really easy for you next time you eat it to recognize that you're instantly in a withdrawal spiral. And you can find your mind and say, this is because I had king cake yesterday. I don't actually need it right now. I'm not actually hungry, but it'll be there when I want it. We have to train the beast, right? We have to tame this mind to say, be here now. Focus on what your actual needs are so we can be normal.
I have a friend who really struggles with sugar addiction. And so she's always talking about it, then restricting, then binging, and then has read things about like giving up sugar altogether and tried that for 30 days, felt amazing, but realized it wasn't sustainable. And so for me, for some reason, yes, sugar can be crack, but maybe it's just that I've developed that relationship with food enough that I do as you say, where I'm like, okay, today, yes, we have chocolate croissants and they're amazing, but I'm not going to have that every single day.
Yeah.
And then there are people that, because how we talked about earlier, 90s diet, whatever it is, it's the fat-free, it's almost everything. Whereas the food that seems like it should be fuel is also so full of GMOs that it is also addictive. And so do you have a way to develop realization around that? What's the process for something like that?
Yeah. So slow and steady. Because people are deeply triggered. And again, restriction of any kind does not work because then we're using willpower. And the truth is, what you've actually developed is inner power. And it's beautiful. Binge eating disorder and bulimia, and shopping addict, food, all these things, when we think about it, it's I need more. I don't have enough. There isn't enough to fill me, is this idea, right? When you have inner power, you come to a place of, I have everything I need inside of me to survive the moment I'm in. And if you are restricting, you're coming from a place of, I can do this for 30 days. And you are totally setting yourself up for a binge on day 31.
That makes a lot of sense. I've had to do that with types of food, with alcohol, with party drugs, with all of the things. And so to me, it's more about the process and that inner feeling. So you're right. And also I have been able to do that and able to develop that inner power. One of the steps was really learning how to identify my triggers so that I wasn't lost in a disempowered spiral and then being like, where did all the work go?
Yeah.
And so how do you recommend that people begin to get in touch with what those triggers are so they can develop more awareness around them?
Well, therapy is great. Meditation is amazing. Long walks are awesome. Recognizing, maybe even journaling, where your mind left your body. What was the instant that it happened, right? We are deeply connected to all the parts of our life. And so it is almost like a ribbon that has been weaved into our soul. And so it could have been your coworker who totally triggered you. But the reality is that came from your youth. And so it doesn't actually necessarily matter so much. It's just how you're going to respond. You're going to master this, right? You're going to say, I accept that this is how I feel. And I can't change anybody who made me feel this way, but I can now choose to respond in a way that is healthier for my body. I love meditation practices. I love energy practices. I love yoga. I love being connected to my body and really working on somatic energy and releasing and letting go of things and coming from a place of real compassion, of even apologizing to myself. I mean, it's, it's interesting. And I wrote this in my book. My mom said to me, and I have a very loving family, which most, a lot of people do, but we're still triggered in a very loving family. I had a 25-minute drive to an hour drive every Wednesday from Calabasas to Westwood to go to UCLA Hospital. And I was 12 and I was about to see 4 gynecologists. And my mom said to me, "Don't cry, we'll go shopping." And it's a moment where, when I reflect on it, I know she tried her best to be as supportive and loving, but what did I probably need in that moment was, it's okay to cry. It's okay to be scared shitless. And we're going to go through this and it will all be okay. We're going to have some tough experiences. And so really recognizing, well, that made me almost have to be superhuman, right? I'd have to not cry in hard times. And so these threads that are kind of weaved through our life, they're important to recognize. But I also know with such gratitude that I'm so happy that I get to be here now and I get to help so many people. And it was that experience that helped me be here.
That is such an easy slip as a mom.
Totally.
I was realizing I had to correct my own behavior. I had a new baby and it was just overwhelming trying to figure out how to deal with a toddler and a new baby. We're also in the middle of moving and we're usually very intentional about screen time. But there was a period of about a month where we just had to use it kind of a lot. And we're like, all right, we're just going to do really good when we get into our new place. And there was a couple meltdowns where it's just like, okay, I can't do this. Let's turn on. He likes to watch If You Give a Mouse a Cookie on Amazon Prime. He calls it Mouse and Moosey. And then I realized like the next week, every time he'd cry, he'd be like, "I need Mouse and Moosey." And I'm like, oh no, here's where it starts. We immediately need a more intentional coping behavior because I don't want him to be like, "I can't handle this. Let me immediately zone out." It's just like, these are the things we talk about as parents. And I thought I would never do it. And I'm already realizing there's a pattern that's been created.
I mean, the thing is like I said, I had a very loving family. And I love my family. I have 3 daughters. There's no way that they're unaffected by me. There's no way I'm not triggering them in something, This is where we develop them. I'm doing the best that I can. I'm trying.
I interviewed a woman once that claimed that she was like, her life is she just sees auras the whole time. And she had her kid and she said something and just saw his aura drain and turn into a different color. She's like, even me. It's like, and it's just seeing the immediateness. And I'm like, oh my goodness.
Yeah. So that's like vibrational. That's magic. That's us. We are magic.
Yes. And so once we realize that our minds flip into threat mode, we have this opportunity to start training our minds. And really the goal is to make our mind and body unaffected by the threat mode. And so would that first step be what you said, where you immediately locate your mind?
Yeah, it would be. Well, I think you would recognize that your mind is not in your body. So yes, same thing. Yeah. Like I said, you can use that. Where's my body? Where is my mind? Or you can do, what time zone is my body in? What time zone is my mind in? And whatever you do, you bring it back. And like, I really always refer to Karate Kid here. Like Mr. Miyagi, had the Karate Kid constantly waxing on and waxing off. And the kid was like, "How much longer am I doing this?" And he's like, "You're not done yet. Keep going." And that was a practice that he didn't know until the neighborhood kid tried to attack him and he waxed on, waxed off, and he automatically had the skills to fight back. And so the practice is all day long, finding your mind. It is probably the single most important thing because our mind, which is doing its own thing, like I said, is also wanting to be 47% of your day sleepwalking. And so in order for us to have real change, we have to be intentional.
When I was attempting to heal from my eating disorder, I did a lot of things for a long time. And I would have periods of maybe a month, maybe a week, maybe 3 months. And then I would kind of have a new spiral. And sometimes it would last just one day. Sometimes it would be like another month of all of my patterns back again. And I started to notice that the changes became longer, more sustainable, or longer periods of time when there was more balance in my life. When I started yoga teacher training, that was a big step. I think the final one was actually when I found love. Like, I felt this instilled sense of worth that I hadn't really fully felt, really probably my whole life. And so I know that you talk about there being 7 areas that impact the balance of our lives. What are those areas, and how do we make sure that none of them are lacking?
Yeah. So there are things like adventure and what's going on with your body, like sleep, exercise, and water, education, friendships. What are your relationships like? What's your career doing? They're really important to kind of have a check-in point on a regular basis to kind of see where you're connected to. And again, without judgment, right? Coming to this place of, okay, I haven't really gone on a vacation or a trip, or I don't have anything on my social calendar, would be kind of like the first step to moving forward in adventure. And, when you talk about disordered eating and binge eating, we talked about, stereotypically a person needs and wants more. And then you said kind of when your gut filled, when you found love, when you started yoga training, like these are opportunities. I call it basically the wellness wheel, and looking at the wellness wheel and understanding like, here's an opportunity for me to fill up, to create this balance every day, to do the best that you can. Check in with your friends. Are you fighting with friends? Are you not sleeping well? If I'm not sleeping well, it's on my mind all day. I'm so tired. I'm so tired. I'm so tired. I mean, what kind of vibration is that? And so if you haven't gone on vacation or you're worried about money, then your mind is constantly on this loop. And so bringing your mind to, okay, I'm here now. I'm safe, because your mind needs to know you're safe. And here is my plan for money. Here is my plan for adventure. What happens then? We start moving forward in things. We just have to recognize where we are having any gaps.
That's a good point, because with a lot of them, it's like, okay, well, what's lacking here and how can I fix it? And so it's like, oh, I'm tired, get some sleep. But then with things like money, it's not always something that we feel is in our total control. And so developing that plan kind of reminds me of how I handle my overwhelm. Or I don't do overwhelm. I'm whelmed. but when I'm whelmed, it's like, I'm like, oh my gosh, I have so much to do. And what I've realized that always helps me is like, okay, well then sit down with my to-do list, write them down, and like schedule them in. If I know that this is going to be done Thursday morning, then I'm not so stressed about it today, even though it's all the same things. And so that's how you teach about really accepting the moment that you're currently in.
Yeah. Right. Like sleep, there can be so many sleep issues. We have problems falling asleep, staying asleep, waking up unrested. And just even reminding our subconscious, sleep is for rest. I have a list of the things I need to do, and I'll check back in with them tomorrow. I don't need to think about them tonight, right? Having just this regular conversation with ourselves that now I'm driving. I'm going to put my driving mind on. I'm not going to space out here, right? Sleep, I'm going to put my sleeping mind on. We need to just have time for all of it.
You mentioned that you have rules for managing your relationship with food.
Yes.
Let's touch on those now.
So I use the word rules because I think about it like kindergarten. And I know that it's a very triggering word. So I'm sorry if anyone is affected by this word, but it's almost good to understand that this is a trigger. So you can then recognize that this is like more like a set of values. Like, would any of us leave the house without brushing our teeth? We probably didn't like that rule. But we've come to like really understand and appreciate it. So kindergarten is kind of a place where we learn how to play on the playground. And we can't possibly build a house on a foundation that is not solid. And these 6 rules create that solid foundation. They're non-negotiables. I often think of a moral compass. And, just to like for fun, if I said to you, oh my God, I have the best idea, you would light up, you'd get excited. You'd be like, what is it, Kim? And then I would say, let's go rob a bank. And then you would laugh at me and say, wait, that's a terrible idea. That totally would ruin
I'd say,
my
which bank? Just kidding.
all right. But people's diet compass is kind of broken, and yet they're still paying attention to it. And so these rules, which then become your value system, are to replace your broken diet compass. So you don't think robbing a bank is a good idea right after you ate, or or in any way, you don't think robbing a bank is a bad idea. And so they are simply in a way to honor your body and pretty much eradicate most diseases. So we're going to go with that. They're all based on science. And the first one is you eat when you're hungry. So this tells me that your body is ready for fuel. Everything is in its place. You're not stressed. You're not anxious. You're here now. Your body needs fuel. You start with half of your normal portion. So you're not using the portion that the chef prepared or the label on the box. You're paying attention to, do I need an apple or a turkey burger right now? You're cutting it in half. You're eating it slowly. You're chewing your food, which is how we break it down so we can absorb and digest it. And then you're coming back in 15 minutes and checking in to see if you need more or you don't need any more food. Because that's when leptin, the hormone that tells our mind we're satisfied, doesn't kick in for 15 minutes. So we could eat all of our food in 3 minutes and be over full on minute 16, or we could eat half of our food and in minute 16 recognize that was actually enough food because I'm going to eat again in 2 or 3 hours. Our entire body thrives when our blood sugar is regulated. And we do that by eating every 3 hours. So the second rule is to eat what you love and to make sure the food loves you back. The third rule is to eat without distractions. This is cravings, this is emotions, this is TV, this is your iPad. This is focusing on, why am I thinking food is a good idea, and let it just be hunger. Rule number 4 is 10,000 steps every day, which the average American gets 3,000. We really need to bump that up for so many reasons. Rule number 5 is 8 cups of water. This is the way that we filter everything. And it's kind of like the secret sauce for keeping us really well. And the last rule is 7 hours of sleep. The average American is getting about 6.5 hours of sleep, and they're obese. And so what we know when you're not sleeping is that it's such a stressful state your body is in that it wreaks havoc on your hormones and causes weight gain. So those are the rules that really become non-negotiables. And when we look at your pattern of healing, it wasn't perfect. And if you had to be perfect, you would have given up. But if it was something where you can be progressive and you can say, gosh, this one lasted 1 week, this one lasted 3 months, that's like, you should champion that so much because we have a very long life ahead of us and we need to be active and we can't give up on ourselves just because something's not perfect.
Looking back on my evolution with food, even though veganism didn't end up being right for me, I ended up experiencing joint issues and brain fog and fatigue. And I really had a hard time admitting it was my diet because of this reason. But this reason was also the thing that helped me so much was the identity factor of it. Like, my mom said at one point, she's like, you have more willpower than anyone I know. And I was sitting with that for a while and I was like, I don't have any more willpower than the average person. It's that I've learned how to identify with the changes that I want to make and become the type of person who does something.
Yeah,
and veganism had so many things wrapped around that, like, oh, the animal rights, the whatever it was. And so when I was moving beyond that, I had to like brainwash myself. I had to go read all about, the animals that are killed in the vegan diet and all these other things. And I'm like, okay, now I can feel just as good for regenerative farming, what this is doing to my body, how I'm absorbing it. And so that's my process. But I think what I've found in talking to other people who have made big life changes, that identity part, like, I'm the type of person, and it doesn't need to be who eats this or who eats that. It's just who takes care of my body, who listens to my body. Adding that in reduces the need for so much willpower when you're making the changes.
Yeah. You had conviction.
Yeah.
It's important.
Well, thank you so much for all of the research that you've put into this book. It's so helpful because I know that food is just, it's like so many people's first major addiction, whatever it is, like just the relationship with it, whatever that manifests for the individual's minds and bodies. And so for listeners who are interested in learning more about working with you and your book, where's the best place for them to connect?
Probably on Instagram. You can find me at Kim Shapira Method. I'm on Pinterest, LinkedIn, TikTok, my website. Everything is Kim Shapira Method. And I have a masterclass available if you're not interested in private sessions, or I have groups if people really do want to meet and get support weekly. And of course, my book, This Is What You're Really Hungry For. This was such a fun conversation. And I feel like you're such like a champion and a role model. And thank you.
All the links for this episode are at mindlove.com/337. Your challenge for this week is to reflect on your food values, because we don't use the word rules. There are so many messages around what we should and shouldn't we be doing around food, whether it's not labeling foods as good or bad, not having rules around food. And that's because for some people that's very true. For others, it's not. So just because one person suggests something doesn't mean it works for absolutely everyone. This is why it's important to tune in with yourself, have grace when something doesn't work. Just tell yourself you're going to find something that does. Based on your experiences, your beliefs, the way your mind works, different things are going to resonate. For me, I like having rules. I like labeling food. It works for me, and I get it's offensive to other people. So I'm not doing it for you. I'm doing it for me. So instead of the word rules, values seems to be pretty widely accepted. What do you value? For me, I like food that makes me feel good. I still eat the indulgences, but I try to buy the high quality versions. I also recognize that I have the privilege of doing that. So decide what works for you. What are you working on? What would you find helpful? And what did we discuss today that you want to take with you? And what do you want to leave? That's how this whole game of self-development works. If we spend more energy pointing fingers and saying, that doesn't resonate with me, or that's offensive, we're actually just giving our power away. And we're focusing more on the problem, which is a form of resistance to actually evolving and healing. So figure out what works for you and determine your food values. Are there any rules, guidelines that you can stick to that does enhance your relationship with food? For me, quality of food is very important. Also, I'm very mindful of food combinations when I'm eating. And if you want to find all of my amazing sponsors, head to mindlove.com/sponsors. Also, Soul Strength launched this week. It's so exciting. We have an amazing group of people that are all moving towards their big vision. So if you missed the boat and you are interested, reach out to me. We can get you on the wait list. We can see what we can do, but you want to be one of the first on there because there are always limited spots, and this one sold out completely. And finally, if this episode was helpful, please consider sharing it. Just tap that little share button, send it directly to a friend, or take a screenshot and tag Mind Love Melissa and Mind Love Podcast. And that's all for today. So thanks for giving your mind a little love today, and I'll see you next week.
Thanks for tuning into Your Higher Frequency with Mind Love. Head to mindlove.com for a free gift to keep your vibes up until next week.